Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. This is Umar Osman with Muslim Strategic Initiative. We're here today with Brother Abdurrahman Murphy, who is a youth director, and we'll be discussing the involvement of youth in our masajid. And we'll be talking about it from three different angles. The first is how to involve the youth in the masjid in a general sense. How do we get them to show up? How do we get them to just come pray? The second thing that we'll discuss is once they're there, what can we do to make the masjid more servicing of their needs? How can they influence masjid policies to help the youth be more involved, to do more programs? And then thirdly, we'll discuss the pros and cons of having the youth serving in an official capacity in the masjid, for example, as in a board position or a committee position. So to start out, we're discussing these to kind of get to the root of the issue that a lot of communities face, which is how do we get the youth involved? How do we get them to be part of our community? How do we turn this community over to the youth, because now our time is kind of passing. These guys are going to take the flag from us. How do we make them a part of this? So to start out, Brother Abdurrahman, you've traveled around the country. You've worked very closely with the youth. You've spoken at conferences. So you've done a lot of counseling as well. In a general sense, what would you say are the main roadblocks that keep the youth from attending the masjid to begin with? Whether it's just for a program or even for salah, just any of the basic things, just the simple act of walking in through the door.
Bismillah. There's a few things, Omar, that in my experience, and my formal experience as a youth director, and also as a volunteer, and even as just a youth who used to come to youth programs at my masjid back in Chicago. There's a few things that come to mind. The first is definitely the level of comfort that kids have at the masjid, and I'm sure that you can attest to this.
Yes.
Growing up, maybe you didn't have that much comfort. You didn't feel like it was a place where you belonged.
It was a place where you had to go, not a place that you wanted to go.
Exactly, right? Like Jummah prayer, it's like, oh, I gotta get up and go and pray and sit through a khutbah and then go home. It wasn't somewhere that you and your friends would use as like a meetup spot.
Right.
Later on in my youth, when I had a good group of guys in Chicago that I was really close with, we would actually use the masjid as our meetup spot, and we would use it as a launch pad for other activities. So, for example, if Isha prayer was at 8 p.m. or 8:30 p.m. the Iqama, and we wanted to go play basketball or go see a movie or something, we would always be comfortable enough going to the masjid and meeting there and praying together in Jama'ah, and then afterwards making plans. And so I think that we need to really focus on making the youth feel like as if the masjid is kind of like a place where they can feel comfortable.
So now, you talked about using it as a meeting place to go to. Have you had instances where your friends might have said, hey, let's go meet up at the masjid, and then let's say go play basketball, but then someone said, no, I don't really feel comfortable going to that masjid because of XYZ reason, and that actually became an impediment for people that wanted to attend actually staying away?
Plenty of times. Honestly, now that you put it that way, I can remember all the memories. Kids would feel as if, one time they were yelled at pretty severely by a certain person, whether that person had maybe was old. Sometimes they were younger people, maybe a little people who were a little bit too overzealous in regards to their religion, and they tried to force it on someone else, and that person.
And it usually just takes one incident.
Usually it takes one. That's it. Once that person has that taste in their mouth, whether it's from someone older or someone younger or whoever, even their parents possibly, it makes them not want to come back. And so I found that's a very common issue. I think in order to really make kids feel comfortable, something that's really important that you and I have talked about before, is just giving kids positive experiences. And there's so many ways you can do that. I mean, we can talk about this further on in the interview, but I think that first and foremost, just on a broader scale, we just have to give kids positive experiences when they come to the masjid. So when they come there, they walk away and they think to themselves, that wasn't so bad.
Right. Also, in terms of general attendance, have you found that, have you done anything that's actually worked where you had kids that maybe you spoke to and they said, I want nothing to do with the masjid, I don't want to go there? And I mean, I know in some cases you've been able to kind of bring them in. Can you talk a little bit about some of the activities that you've done or some of the strategies that you've used that help kind of bring them in, whether it was immediately, gradually, whatever the case may have been?
Yeah, I mean, when I was a youth director at the Salam Association of North Texas, from in the year 2010 up to 2011, we did a lot of programs, alhamdulillah, for the kids, and we tried to balance out things that would be attractive but also beneficial to them. The analogy I like to use sometimes is putting medicine in the food. When you have to give an animal medicine like a cat or some sort of pet, usually the veterinarian tells you to put the medicine in the food, because when you put it in there, the animal won't know what you're giving it. Now, I'm not likening kids to animals,
right,
but what I'm trying to say is that you kind of have to present things in a way where they don't realize that they're benefiting. So, for example, we built a youth lounge, and so we had a nice HD projector mounted on the ceiling. We had some couches, we had a Wi-Fi network set up, and kids would come in after school. They would just kind of like relax and let go and kind of just unwind. But at the same time, as they're playing NBA 2K or as they're playing Madden, and I'm kind of joining in, I wasn't always playing with them. They were a lot better than I was, but I wouldn't always play with them, but I would sit with them, and then we'd start talking. Brother Murphy, why can't we date? Brother Murphy, why is weed haram? This, so discussions would just start flowing, and I think that you yourself
they had a welcoming place to come and hang out.
Oh, definitely, and once they felt comfortable and secure there, then all of a sudden what happens? They start trusting the staff of the masjid. So, for example, because I worked in that office particularly, they trust me a lot,
Right.
and so I can only imagine if we created the whole masjid as a comfortable place, how the imam's relationship with the youth would be a lot better as well.
Now, in the beginning, we mentioned that it takes one bad incident to kind of turn someone off. So I can imagine if you're playing video games, even though it's in a separate lounge, it's still within the confines of the masjid.
Yeah.
So some people are going to raise objections.
Mm-hmm.
So have you found that once this welcoming environment is there, is there more of a resistance in the sense that youth are able to put up with more of those incidents and know that, well, that's a one-off kind of thing, and I've still got a place to go to? Or do they still treat it as, okay, I tried to go to the masjid, then that guy yelled at me, and that's just how it always is, and I'm not coming back.
It's a case-by-case scenario. There are some kids who kind of like, it's become their safe haven, so they just kind of come and chill there, and no matter what happens, and they know they can always come and hang out with Brother Murphy. But there are other cases where kids say, man, even here I'm going to get yelled at. I'm
Right.
trying to come and spend time at the masjid, play a little bit of video games in between Asr and Maghrib, and I'm still getting yelled at. So it's really case-by-case, but if you were to ask me to apply a general rule to it, I would say the second scenario is more common, unfortunately. And that's why we really have to stress, it's really important for us to kind of realize that the way that we treat people anywhere, but especially in the masjid, it's really going to give them that impact. And we have to be able to realize that if we set them off, or someone that we know set them off, then we might be held accountable for that. On the other side, if we make it attractive for them and we make them feel it's a positive experience, then inshallah we're going to reap the benefit from that.
So when we kind of look at a community by community level, a lot of parents raise the issue of the masjid's not doing anything for my kids. The masjid's not doing anything to bring the youth in. So in that case, would you then agree with the statement that the emphasis needs to be on each individual person in the community making sure that they're doing whatever they can to make it welcoming to the youth?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the first part, but the second part is how much accountability is there on the people in charge to make sure that they don't slip up and, maybe on purpose or accidentally create an environment where those people are being turned away? Kind of what's the balance between people doing their part, but also then holding people in position accountable as well?
I think that's
I know it's a tough line to tread.
It's a great question, though. Honestly, I mean, that's what I like about, what you're doing with these videos is that you kind of, you go at the situations that need to be answered, and we're not towing the line anymore because, and this is kind of goes along with the question, is that we're losing a lot of people. I mean, the amount of kids that I've seen in the last year who have come and told me, Brother Murphy, I don't really believe in God anymore, or this religion makes no sense to me. They've far outweighed the number of kids that have benefited, and that's just that I don't think that's claiming any ineffectiveness towards our youth group,
Right.
but it's more along the lines of just like
it's the situation that we live in.
We're fighting an uphill battle, and so we do really have to kind of take a look seriously at the situation before it gets beyond repair. And I think there's two things that you mentioned that I think are really key. Is that the community at large, the parents and the adults, and even the younger professionals who maybe don't have kids yet and they're just getting married or just getting started, they have to realize a couple things. The first and foremost is that their community is on the weight of these kids.
Right.
As these kids get older, as these kids grow up, who are going to be the ones running this place? Who are going to be the ones financially contributing to the sustainability of this place? Like, once all of our blessed elders, inshallah, pass away and enter Jannah with no hisab, Ameen. Once they leave, the people who are sustaining us financially, are the kids going to have that memory and think to themselves, man, this place hooked me up when I was young, so I'm going to hook them up now? Or are they going to say, man, they didn't do anything for me?
Are they going to have the same level of attachment that their parents did?
Exactly. And the parents came here with such noble causes and noble intentions, but we have to kind of reevaluate those intentions.
And they had to come in a preservation mode, basically,
Oh, yeah.
of fear that our kids are going to grow up without seeing a masjid, without having Islamic
Yeah.
education, so they started putting the institutions in place.
Yeah, and that's why sometimes people, they bash on the elders, they try to criticize them very harshly, but to be honest with you, they did their job very well. They established amazing community centers for our kids to go to. And
So what's the most important duty upon people like me, people like you at this stage?
yeah,
then?
I mean, people who are in the ages of, the 20s, 30s, 40s, even I would say early 50s, they have the mind frame and the mindset of realizing that just building a place to pray is not exactly going to fix the problem. So I think that the responsibility that we have is to go and to let our leadership know through a very, very cordial, courteous process that these are the things that we need. And don't just shout them out. I mean, every masjid in the nation...
Right, so this kind of brings us to the second point, and that is, now once we've kind of made somewhat of a welcoming environment, we've kind of started getting them through the door. Now, how do they influence the masjid policies?
Yeah.
What are the items of focus? for example, the youth might want a gym.
Yeah.
The masjid might want to expand. And I talked about this with Sheikh Abdul Nasser in a previous video as well. But kind of from the youth perspective, what would you say are the top priority issues that they need to influence within their masajid?
I would say that we need to create a space for kids, whether it be a gymnasium or a lounge or even a library or a study room. Any plan that we set our mind to, we need to do just that. We need to plan it and set our mind to it. We can't just go to the board and yell things. Oh, we need a gym. We need this. We need that. No, we have to show them an actual thought out step-by-step plan. So, for example, if the kids want to build a gym, if you want to build a gym in your community, that's an amazing thing, and it's definitely going to help your community. Do some research. Look at local contractors and construction companies. Ask them. Get a quote. Ask them how much space you're going to need. Do this research. Crunch these numbers, because the majority of our leadership in the communities are volunteer positions. They are already working.
And a lot of times when they say no, it's because they know that saying yes means that they have to do a lot more work.
Yeah.
Whereas if the youth come with a pre-made plan, you found that they're more receptive to.
And it shows the adults
listening.
what? It shows the adults
Initiative.
Exactly, and that's going to be like, wow, these kids are actually serious about this. They're not just yelling and whining, right? Which is what most of it's attributed to. And what it's going to do is, because these people, they work full-time jobs.
So this is a lot of, if the youth want to be treated like adults, they also need to act like adults as well.
Yeah, and then at the other side, the adults need to have a keen eye for when the youth are acting like adults. So when the youth start acting like adults,
when they show responsibility,
like
then reciprocate.
Definitely, I agree. I think so, and I think that we have to realize that this leadership is working very hard at our communities, so we have to support them and show them that we're really serious about it by taking these steps, planning out, and getting also community support. You always see in the greater community in the United States, in the park districts, whenever anyone wants anything built or anything, the first thing they do is what? They petition. They start getting sheets, and they start going to people, explaining their cause and getting signatures. As Muslims, we're kind of like disjointed.
Right.
4 or 5 people are yelling for the same thing, but they don't even know each other.
Now, when it comes to something like that, the onus has to fall on someone to take charge.
Mm-hmm.
Would I be fair in saying that the parents of those youths have the most right to take charge in that? Or it's most important for them to take charge?
Take charge in a way, I think, of effort and putting forth, kind of like making some noise about it, but I think the youth have to be the ones in charge of owning it. And what I mean by that is that the parents are going to be the support group, but we have to push the kids in the forefront. Not when I say kids, I don't want you guys to think of like 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds. I'm talking like 13, 14. These kids have to be pushed and said, listen, if you want this, you're an adult, let's plan this out, because this is going to be for you, your kids, and your grandkids. But the parents have to be there behind them, right? And
they've also got to be the bridge between the youth and the elders as well.
Yeah, definitely, because a lot of the elders, they've heard so many things, and they've seen so many things that they need a little bit of convincing when it comes to listening to youth. But I think that we'd be honestly surprised if we present opportunities for our youth to own situations. We'd be surprised at how they do. And
that kind of brings us to the final point, and that is, in your experience, what have you seen are kind of the positives and negatives of youth trying to take an official position? And the reason that I asked that question is because in a lot of communities, when the rhetoric pops up of we need youth involvement, the automatic solution is, well, we'll just stick an 18-year-old in the masjid board, and we've kind of fulfilled our responsibility now.
Or a sister, hit 2 birds with 1 stone.
Right, a sister, 18-year-old, now we've involved the sisters and the youth all together.
Yeah. That's, I think what you said is very accurate, in that it is just rhetoric. I mean, we do see a lot of communities, they just want to kind of fill a quota.
Right.
But once the community is serious, then it becomes a whole other issue, and I think that we've been kind of having this pattern in our conversation now, that kids need to kind of take charge and step up. And I think once the kids do that, so once the kids have gone to the board and shown initiative and shown planning and maturity, then the reality of joining the administration isn't so far off.
Right.
So once the kids kind
of
of
almost a natural consequence.
Exactly. So once the kids spend 6 to 8 months showing the elders that we're involved and we're concerned about this place and we want to keep it going, we want to keep your legacy, the place that you built and you've run, we want to keep it running for our community. Then the adults and the elders are thinking, man, maybe these kids can take the reins, right? And then once we see that, I mean, I've seen communities, and oddly enough, they were smaller communities, but I think that might make it easier if they're a little bit smaller. They've taken, I don't want to say control, but they've taken responsibility of the community, and you just see them soar, not because of anything spectacular, but because they're just relevant. So what they do is they do programming that's relevant to the kids. So instead of having an event about the 45 virtues of fasting on Mondays and Thursdays, which I'm not bashing it, I'm sure there are many, and this is something we should do. They have events talking about what are ways that you can get through 4 years of high school and still be Muslim at the end of it. What are ways?
It's more tailored toward the daily struggle that those kids are facing.
And then once those kids kind of feel a place in the masjid, then they do want to learn about fasting on Mondays and Thursdays. But right now, it all seems pointless to them because according to them, they're barely making.
So that's what kind of brings it full circle, is that in order to have people that are officially taking charge and motivated and driving the community forward, in order to get them motivated in the first place, they need programs that are A, welcoming, and then B, kind of relevant to their situation.
Yeah, definitely. I think relevancy is the key. As long as the programming is relevant, not only educational, by the way, socially relevant. Having a basketball court is nice, but that's not the only thing.
Right.
You can do barbecues, you can do hiking
and that's
trips.
another thing that we see. There's a lot of build it and they will come. So a lot of communities are moving. Mahalna is a good sign that people are building gymnasiums and things like that. But it's just another one of those. It keeps falling short.
Yeah.
You can't put the structure up and then.
I mean, there was a prophet before there was a Masjid Nabawi, right? There was a Nabi before Masjid Nabawi, and so we kind of have to realize that we need to invest in human resources, as opposed to building resources. Because once we have the human resource and it's working with the kids, then once we build the place, it's on, right?
And kind of one practical way of doing that. And I don't mean to put you on the spot since you are a youth director, but maybe having visited a number of communities, you can kind of speak to this. One of the necessary things would be that each community have its own youth director that can do these types of programs. A lot of times this falls on the shoulders of the imam, or maybe whoever's kind of the father of the community or some type of one figure. But would you say that it's necessary as part of the human resources that they invest in taking a youth from the community and actually giving him that youth directorship?
Whether it be from the community or from another community. I mean, I've gotten a lot of job offers for this particular position.
And there's only what, 4 of these in the entire country right now?
Yeah, 4 or 5 that I've heard. And so
that are doing it full time.
We need, on one side, we need the masjids to start opening up positions, which alhamdulillah they are. And the second side was we need people who can understand that this situation is getting pretty serious, and that doing this job is a very noble thing to do. We have a lot of mashallah professionals in the community, but we need professional workers in the Muslim community building up the community from the ground up with the youth. I mean, we need kids. We need young adults, young males and females. We need female youth directors as well. Seriously considering and thinking about training in this science, in this field, so that we can really create a nice, safe haven for our youth. If you look at churches, Omar, I mean, we're in Dallas, Texas right now. Churches have 5, 6, sometimes 7 youth directors. Some of them are licensed in certain kinds of counseling. Some of them are licensed in certain kinds of social work. Some of them are licensed in so many different things. But they have like 6 or 7 youth directors, and that falls back on the community. Is that if the community wants someone to take care of the youth, to make sure that their kids are looked after, you got to put the money where the mouth is. The communities have to put down a fund for a youth director. I'm not saying donate generally $10. We should do that already. Every week, $10. Every week, $20 on Jummah or whatnot. But they need to say this fund is for a youth director, someone who's going to be dedicated here full time, 45, 50 plus hours a week, working with our youth, teaching them, training them, being there for them. That is what the communities need to do. So we need to have kids or young adults, young males and females, step up and say, I want to do this. But we also need to have communities saying, listen, we're here to sponsor you, we'll take care of that. Once we have those 2 things click, man, I think we're going to see a really amazing growth in the community, inshallah.
All right, Jazakallah khair, Brother Abdurrahman, for taking the time to speak to us. This is Umar Osman from Muslim Strategic Initiative, and inshallah we'll see you again soon in the next video.